Mhm. Oh, oops. Hello, and welcome to another fully live Friday episode of Hacking with Friends, where I am in charge and anything could go wrong. So, is that the sound of a fan I hear? A fan desperately worrying to keep a computer barely running as it hosts the entire stream? Is that a familiar combination of colors and shapes you see at the bottom of your screen? Well, yes, my friends, it turns out that my computer is back from the dead, or at least a coma. Earlier this week, or I guess over the weekend, it decided to stop charging. And this is something that's been a problem for a while. It also gets very hot during a stream, will not charge. And I haven't managed to get it replaced. Instead, I am in some sort of replacement process to maybe get another one in the next month or so. But this one is back. The computer repair store fixed it. No lessons learned. They have no idea what happened to it, but they did pull a lot of glitter out of it. So I just want to go ahead and thank all the people who were mourning the death of this computer. Typically, anytime there's a problem with my MacBook, Apple will take it and they'll completely replace the top, which means it's lost all of its individuality. I get to sticker it up all again. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been rooting for this computer. Based on the sheer volume of the fan right now, I think we might not be out of the woods, but we'll try to get through the stream and see what we can do with this trusty old computer. And thank you again to everybody who had the best wishes. I was actually kind of surprised. There was 273 people that were mourning the loss of this computer. So don't worry, she's on her way out, but she's going to be around with us for at least a little bit longer. I'm actually seriously regretting running the entire stream through this computer, mostly because I had to set everything up for the last stream that you saw through a desktop computer running a totally different operating system. So it's been a lot of production work this time. I think that we're ready to go, but long live my computer, this very terrible thing. I also saw as we were starting up hello to everybody in the chat, by the way. I see all of you. And somebody was mentioning, Serge was mentioning that he should back up all nullbyte videos ASAP. Yeah, you probably should. It's recently come to my attention that some random company has purchased Wonder How To, the company that owns nullbyte. So you might see some really weird stuff coming out on that channel at some point in the future. Who knows? I really have no idea what they're going to do with it. So yeah, if you were thinking about backing up the nullbyte channel, now might be the time to do it. All right, so let's glitter bombs. Yes. Yeah, please don't send me any glitter. The computer has already had the maximum amount of glitter that it was rated to, and it's already still recovering. So I wanted to go through a couple things that I went over on Twitter this week. One of them is Bing's AI image generator. So my friend had made this piece of art from a prompt crystal. He imagined a gas station attendant, and I tried to take that and recreate it with Bing's new built-in image generator. So this is really cool. With Bing, you can just go ahead and ask it to create an image, and it works pretty much like DALL-E. And I would say that the effects are pretty similar. I kind of like showed this off earlier, but I would say these are in the ballpark, you know? Like these are not too off from each other. I described the art style. I described a couple other things. And what I will say is it's pretty funny how AI cannot do text. So it just says some vague, weird, jumbly stuff. But yeah, so pretty cool that AI image generation is now baked into Bing and I believe Explorer. No, wait, whatever the new one is. Microsoft's browser. They keep, sunsetting ones. I don't want to I bank on any now. But it's really cool to see that you can do this just kind of the same way you would use any other browser-based tool instead of having to navigate to a specific website. I'm really impressed by the way that Microsoft is integrating some of the things that are actually useful and cool. I was getting some good ideas from some of these just the other day, although not necessarily just from Crystal. This was kind of just for fun. She looks so mean in this one. But yeah, so this is now for free for users of Bing. And if you have Windows, you might notice that some of this stuff is now kind of like baked in, where you can just like generate these pretty easily just from like the operating system key. Crazy that like AI stuff is just coming into everything now, but kind of, honestly kind of makes sense. All right. So also, I noticed there was another good resource coming up for finding information security conferences. So of course that's useful because you never know what stuff is going on. And frankly, like some of the ways of searching can be a little bit difficult. But if you're looking for a way of being able to find InfoSec conferences, then this is something that could be useful to you. And frankly, InfoSec conferences are amazing. They allow you to connect with lots of people. And if they're in your local area, that's even better. So yeah, I would highly recommend checking out some of these resources for InfoSec conferences. Yeah, if you're interested in connecting with other people. So this is a tweet that got a lot of attention. It's got 28.1 thousand views and a bunch of likes, and a lot of people are bookmarking it, which is funny. So this is a video of me using a storm drain tunnel to basically, this was a group of my computer science friends. We were trying to look at whether or not phones were actually turning off their Wi-Fi when you turned off the Wi-Fi icon. Like if you say, okay, stop communicating, could I as a hacker still be able to detect someone? Now, this all started because I was doing some, I believe I was looking at whether you could use like beacon frames or other things to detect when a certain device was nearby. And we kept turning off the Wi-Fi and my detector kept going off for this phone and we couldn't figure out what was going on. So we decided to go into the storm drain tunnels in order to get a completely radio silent environment and be able to take a look at each device and figure out like which settings would really turn off the Wi-Fi, like actually, and what kinds of things were actually being leaked. So I took Wireshark down into the storm drain tunnel and listened for any of our phones going off. And we found that certain phones were worse than others. We found that Samsung phones in particular were constantly scanning for their location by putting out beacon frames, which were very trackable and weren't rotated at all. So that was interesting because it allowed me as a hacker to continuously track someone with a Samsung phone, even if their Wi-Fi was turned off. So why does it work that way? Like, what is the point of having a phone betray you like that? Well, it turns out that that setting is actually managed somewhere else. And somebody on the thread actually commented very accurately, like it does provide like a very reasonable way of doing this. It just buries it. It puts it in a place that is not intuitive for people to find. I don't remember where it is. But basically what it's saying is it is an assisted GPS setting. So it's under location settings, not Wi-Fi, that will turn on the Wi-Fi radio and then use it to try to determine where it is. And it does that by both listening and then broadcasting packets. Now, if you are thinking that you're being private or that you're untrackable via Wi-Fi, that's a problem because it means that even though you've turned off Wi-Fi for Wi-Fi, this other thing is allowed to use Wi-Fi for location. So the only real way of turning it off was turning on airplane mode. We were able to find would turn that off. You could also disable location services, but sometimes it would like wake back up spontaneously in order to provide better service. And that's really because in a city or in a lot of different situations, GPS sucks and is very slow to acquire a fix. So yeah, I was just interested that this tweet kind of like blew up and got a lot of attention. People felt both sold out by their phones and also interested in why, like it was that people turning off their Wi-Fi weren't actually having their Wi-Fi turned off. Like, what's the point of doing this if it seems like such an egregious betrayal of the user to actually still have Wi-Fi running in a trackable way when they've specifically selected to turn off Wi-Fi. So if you have any questions about how this works, it was a subject of some of the research that I did. And yeah, I found it to be very interesting to use a radio silent environment like this to like suss out some of the quirks that different implementations of Wi-Fi on different types of devices had. So again, like Samsung was perfectly happy to wake up the Wi-Fi to look around and see if it could find out where it was, whereas some of these other devices actually would turn off their Wi-Fi radio when you selected like Wi-Fi off on the main interface. So a little bit weird. Like a lot of people don't know why this trackable signal would still be coming out of their phones, but that's why. So we talked a lot about AI before, and specifically about how some of these leaked large language models were spreading. One person active in that community has also released, I guess I would call it an art project, Wingardium Balenciana, a completely automated fashion show that goes on forever because, oh wow, because it is generated by AI prompts, AI all the way down. So the point here is that it's constantly mutating, constantly changing, and is going to make an infinite variety of things. Whether any of those things are valuable is completely up to user interpretation. But what I'm seeing is basically like a Tumblr fashion blog set on autopilot forever, where in 100 years, our ruined society could be found by like space travelers, and this fashion show would still be going on for no one. So kind of an interesting thing to take, again, effectively like a fashion Tumblr blog on autopilot and then just bring it to the masses and let people kind of do whatever they want with it. I found it to be a very interesting application of some of these democratized large language models. And frankly, I think that the fact that individuals are using these for art projects and other non-centralized things is critical to the development of AI, to make it equitable and make sure that we're using it for things that individuals have access to, not just giant corporations. So really cool, kind of punk. I like it a lot. And yeah, I'm glad that you are also a fan of Fashion Shrek. That was incredible. But yeah, like I know a lot of people are using things like Midjourney, and I was using like Blue Willow and some other stuff to generate images. And now that it's built into Bing, like from a security context, we're talking about the ability to create convincing fakes, but also from the perspective of somebody who relies on a lot of these tools for offloading creativity. It's pretty incredible to see these just popping up everywhere. So I've often, when playing with the Flipper, which we'll get into because the Flipper was in the news today or yesterday, talk about other things that can take the next step for like RFID. And this is a project where when I was looking for other sorts of Flipper-like devices for RFID, this came up a lot. It's called the Chameleon Mini or the Chameleon Ultra. And what I found was that the chip shortage had really affected this project, and it had slowed down a lot. And the prototypes were available, but they were quite expensive. It looks like some of the progress is speeding up again. So if you are a fan of some of the NFC hacking stuff that's in the Flipper Zero, this is a project to check out. I just remember being really disappointed to see that they had been held up substantially by the chip shortage and things were moving very slowly. So again, I'm just stumbling back into this project after seeing it kind of not abandoned, but at least like slow down substantially. And I'm really encouraged to see it progressing again. I will check back in if I actually get my hands on one and can vouch for it. So I'm not saying that it's amazing. I'm just saying that it does a lot of the things that I wish, the Flipper would do as a next step. Like some of these cool like nested attacks or other things that the Flipper doesn't quite do yet. All right, let's go ahead to the next one. So this is just something I wanted to shout out from forever ago. I'm often asked like, what were some of the best projects or outreach organization things that I've seen? And this was one of the best workshops in terms of just attracting people who normally wouldn't interact with a workshop, and having them make something just amazing and cool. So this is programmable jewelry. But the point here wasn't to teach people to program it. It was to appeal to people of all skill levels. And what I really liked about it was if you were just a total beginner and you just wanted to make some art, you could solder on diffusers onto the top of this to make your LEDs kind of like custom and cool. They had like stained glass and other like cut glass that you could put on top of it. And frankly, it was such a cool way of attracting people who like electronics, but maybe feel a little intimidated by the programming and just want to make something beautiful and cool. And of course, if you're more advanced, then there were more things you could do to make this even more special. Like programming it to be custom colors. And I think this even had like a color sensor on it. So you could hold it up to other colors and it would copy the color onto the LEDs. So this kind of interactivity and getting people comfortable with electronics and to have like a just I don't know, like a customizable workshop that goes both up and down in terms of skill level and also like what people can work on. I just thought it was the coolest thing I've seen. So just a shout out to this project. Like I wanted to revisit it today because I was just thinking about it. I was talking with someone the other day about like making PCB jewelry. And when I thought of it, I was like, wow, like I remember that really awesome and interactive project. So if you're a designer making cool projects for people, or if you want some inspiration, then I thought this was really cool because I saw so many happy people walking away with a finished board from this. And, like it's not all the time that you see a project that just delights almost everyone that does it. All right, so I noticed that Bing knows who I am. So if you ask Bing who I am, it'll like give you a pretty good short description, like the way you would see in like a Wikipedia article. So I was like, it's only a matter of time before there's like an integration, that like pushes that description to Wikipedia or something. So my favorite thing would be if that happens and one is created, or if somebody does create a Wikipedia article about like Nullbyte or something, please only use images of me that will ruin the training models for future startups that are trying to do facial recognition. So if you see like they want to build a product, so when you like see me at a party, you can put up your phone and like find out my like bio or whatever and see all my videos. No, please upload this video with the little face and whatever and the sunglasses and just make it as hard as possible for them, please. Like I would really like to ruin that for them. So just thinking about the inevitability where if you do public stuff like I do, like now that Bing knows who I am, and you can just ask like, who's Kody Kinsey? And it'll explain to you exactly who I am and what my business is and what channels I've been on. It's kind of cool, but it's also kind of creepy because like you don't really get control over what goes into that description. So yeah, there might be a description about you already out there that the AI has decided on, and that's a little weird to me. So please poison the AI model as much as possible. If you've got unintelligible weird pictures of yourself that can't be consumed into some sort of product, maybe upload those. That would be good. And then you guys know I like microcontrollers. I've been trying out the ESP32S3. It's a really cool little successor to the ESP32S2 that I've been using for about a year now. It comes with Bluetooth, and one of the form factors that it was kind of imagined in was as like an IoT hub or an IoT device because it has, well, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and all the stuff you would want for that sort of thing. So I picked up this little example board. I'm going to be playing with it, but I just thought it was such a cool way of demonstrating the power of these new little microcontrollers running these like color screens that are quite detailed and actually look pretty nice. Pretty cheap too. And then last up, you can look forward to a new version of HCX Dump Tool. So this is something that has made it easier to capture Wi-Fi handshakes and allow you to do all sorts of interesting attacks. Looks like it's going to be optimized in a cool upcoming way. But I was just looking forward to this because this is a Wi-Fi hacking tool that I use pretty often, honestly, and it's cool to get some rumblings that it's going to be updated. So if you're somebody that's into Wi-Fi hacking, then this is something to continue to pay attention to. Yeah, data poisoning for the win. Let's do that. I think that'd be super funny. So also speaking of AI stuff, like I had a voice message sent to me that was like clearly addressed to me, but in a weird anime voice that sounded really convincing, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And that's how I found out about So this was something that some people were saying this is for phishing, and I have seen people saying that you could do phishing with this sort of thing to hide like an accent or make your voice sound more like a specific other voice. And this isn't like matching you to another voice. It just has a number of different voices that it can do, but you can basically speak and say something to it, and it'll take audio. I guess I'll let it take some audio and it'll make a sample and all that sort of stuff. And then when it's done, you can select a voice that you want to give it. So I'll select that, I guess, and hit submit. And I don't know if this is going to work. In fact, it seems like it's acting kind of buggy. Yeah, it's freaking out. Stop. Faith. Submit. It'll convert it, and then it'll come back, and your voice will sound completely different. Now, is this completely revolutionary? No, but I'm seeing these pop up everywhere, and I realize that some of the TikTok like creators that I listen to are actually using these voice changers to like hide their identity or make it so that their personality comes through, but you're listening to someone else. So let's hear what this sounds like, and hopefully, it don't create a horrible feedback loop. Yeah, so okay, don't know if you heard that, but made me sound like an anime cat girl. That's fine. That's great. Maybe it will increase my engagement, in fact. But it's just worth noting that these tools are out there. A lot of them are like now free, or you can do them in little 30-second chunks. So if you start getting like weird voice messages that are specifically addressed to you, just realize a child could do this now. It's no longer challenging. And some of the more advanced ones that mimic a specific voice are definitely out there too. So I was having some fun with this, and it was definitely something that was cool. So also, let's say that you wanted to run a show just like mine, but you didn't have time to read every single news story. I wonder if there's a way that you could, summarize all this. Like, it kind of seems obvious what the story is, but what if I just click this button? Oh, look, ChatGPT just summarizes everything, and it also speaks down to you by making little icons around each fact so that you don't get bored, so your eyes don't get tired while you're reading this. This is like spoon feeding a news article if I've ever had it done to me. I just have to say that, like, it's actually kind of amazing. It's something where if you are somebody who wants a summary of a web page or an article or something like that, like, this is kind of honestly a godsend. So I just discovered this today. I found it to be super useful slash threatening to my job. And if you're interested in it, it is what is it even called? ChatGPT Summarize Everything. It just ties into your ChatGPT account and allows it to send information back and forth. And when you plug it into ChatGPT 3.5, so you don't use up your precious ChatGPT 4 conversation bandwidth limit, then you can actually do a lot of cool stuff. So anyway, it is becoming more and more clear that Telegram is now the go-to place if you want to buy phishing tools and services. So what's interesting about this? Well, mostly that it's kind of hard to catch the people that are doing this. And in a lot of cases, bots are the ones that are doing a lot of the sales and stuff. So that's actually a trend that I'm seeing in other marketplaces too. Bots are providing the transaction information, acting as an intermediary, basically, and they are kind of the core of some of how these services no longer have to involve a person in the middle potentially getting caught. So the fact that you're just dealing with like an interactive bot that is able to give you a bunch of prepackaged tools, even stuff for free as a promotion, is definitely interesting. So, and it's just interesting to see that some of the people we've seen targeting Telegram, Russia was one of them we were talking about just last week, really want access to these markets for a variety of different places. A lot of them are suppressing political speech, but also there are some criminal groups that are just operating on Telegram that are probably the subject of some pretty intense investigations. So where you see a bunch of juicy stuff, you also see a lot of police presence, as you'll see in some of our stories in just a little bit. Whoa, there were a lot of comments, by the way. Yeah, hello. Oh, hello, Simply Cyber. Nice to see you. All right, so next up, Google is going to require Android applications to let you delete your account. Now, when does this come into play? I would say the number one abuse I've seen of this sort of behavior is IoT light bulbs. Like, you have to really sell your soul in order to get some of these like really cheap IoT light bulbs to like set up and work. And my suspicion is that they're kind of like almost like subsidized by the cost of your data and the information that comes with you registering. So they collect information like your home Wi-Fi password, your network information, like your IP address, like all these other things that are tied to your email address that must be really juicy for these companies who, want to make a buck on literally anything they can and have very loose and fast like terms of service. So if you have to sign up for one of these things and you use the IoT light bulb once, but you give it permission to gather data about you like forever and then have an account registered with them, that's just data they're allowed to sell about you forever. It's extra money they can make. People can tie that data together into interesting and useful ways you can't conceive of and make money off of that. So that's kind of a bad situation, because in order to then do this, that even if you delete your account, your data is still there and you can't really do anything about that aside from logging into the account and finding out where individually in that particular app or in that particular website you can unsubscribe. So the fact that it's been always very difficult to unsubscribe from this is a huge data mine. It's basically something that people who want to gather your data can use. So even if you only buy their product once and never use it again, they're still making money off of you. So I see this as a really positive step, because it's just frankly so difficult to do this that most people don't bother, and they continue to have accounts on these like cheap IoT device apps or whatever else, and they profit off of that. So this is really cool. I like to see that it could be this simple as this. I'm sorry, you guys, I hate this art style. There's a lot of names for it. One of them is Global Homo. That's real. That's what it's called. And just like the weird simplified people it makes out of like weird cutout paper shapes just creep me out. I'm sorry if you like this art style. But anyway, that's how simple it is to do account deletion. That has never been that easy before. You always had to go through some weirdo website or like something that like made it super difficult to find this. So I have to say, like, oh wow, I'm still showing that one comment. Hi, hello. It was a good comment, but we'll take it down. Yeah, it's really encouraging to see that people might actually be able to remove their data from some of these, frankly, just like data mines that are like easy for people to get caught in the trap of and then just forget that they ever signed up, but actually send away some personal information like your home Wi-Fi network. Like you wonder how that stuff gets cracked. Well, if one of these companies has your data and then they get breached or they just sell it because they want extra money, that password could end up on a password cracking list in very short order. So just, be aware where you put your data, and a password for your local Wi-Fi network might not seem like a big deal until it gets breached or sold, and then suddenly anybody can crack your network in a very short period of time. All right, next up. So this is one of those examples where hackers finding vulnerability and they're like, hey, there's a problem, and they get no response. And then they're like, hey, no, this is really a big problem, and they get no response. It seems as though there's no fix to this, in part because there's been no communication with the maker of these smart garage doors. So there's a couple problems here. One of them is that their control server is publicly exposed with hard-coded credentials. So us in security know that if you have hard-coded credentials, it's very hard to do anything about that, especially if these are not devices that are designed to be updated. So seeing as these seem to not be devices that are supposed to be updated very often, it seems like the use of hard-coded credentials here is really the core of these problems, and the fact that they're exposed so publicly. Again, there's no fix for this right now, and a pretty simple post request is all that's required to go ahead and open a garage door. So it looks like the MAC address is all that's necessary in order to send these commands, which is an extremely severe vulnerability. So yeah, just got to say, this is an IoT device that literally controls access to someone's garage that probably has lots of juicy stuff in it. The fact that it can be so trivially exploited, especially remotely, is pretty scary. Then again, they probably could have fixed this, but it seems as though despite efforts to reach out, nobody managed to reply or like indicate if they were going to fix this. So as of now, there's no fix, and this is an actively exploited vulnerability. All right, so this is an interesting one. This is apparently Spain's most dangerous and elusive hacker now in public custody and police custody. So what exactly happened here? Why is this 19-year-old being considered Spain's most dangerous hacker? Because that's an opinion, and I would like to know what they based it on. Well, it seems like this particular person was seen as a threat to national security because they claim to have access to the information of roughly 90% of all Spanish citizens. Now, to be fair, if you breach the right companies, like that's actually pretty reasonable. Like I wouldn't say that that's entirely unreasonable. But yeah, okay, here he is. So making public opinions like isn't really the best idea. When you do this sort of thing, obviously wanting to be recognized for your accomplishments is a core human thing that a lot of people want. But in this case, it seems like that exposure was not very helpful. So again, I haven't really heard a lot about this specific hacker. I was just reading about him today, so I don't really want to go out and say anything other than what I know. It just seems as though he was involved in a lot of data breaches and also had a lot of cryptocurrency, which was cleaned through mixing services, which have been increasingly targeted by police. If I had to guess how they probably started tracking him, I would say that would probably be a start. All right, so to be arrested in Operation Cookie Monster. I would find this a little embarrassing, but it seems like Operation Cookie Monster is a go, and the FBI was able to take over the infrastructure for Genesis Market. Now, this is another example of a market that is primarily run by bots. And what's cool here, or not what's cool, but what's notable, I guess, is that the administrators have not been caught or identified. But the FBI is certainly interested in anyone that is in contact with them. So Operation Cookie Monster apparently was mostly, I love that they put it like front and center. So you're trying to go to get your ill-gotten goods, and instead they're just like, no, wait, is that the real logo they used? Is this real? Wow. Okay. I don't really know if this, okay, source is bleeping computer. I don't really know if this, sometimes they put like a banner up and I'm just like, who had time to do the graphic design on this banner? It kind of looks like that's actually the banner that you're using, which if that is the case, then the fact that this is how the FBI sees themselves in their like promotional stuff that they're now using for takedown banners is very funny to me. But it's good that they have a healthy design team. I'm impressed by this. This is much more fancy. That this looks like a sponsorship banner rather than like the typical takedown seizure notice that you see. So wow, yeah, the graphics team at the FBI is really working overtime. Good for them. Yeah, so it seems like they had the support of multiple organizations, as you can see on the bottom here in this very large group of banners, which leads me to believe that the infrastructure for this organization was probably spread all over the world, and they needed a lot of coordination to take it down or take over the majority of it. But it seems like the infrastructure is still active, which would mean if you are buying and selling on this platform, it is probably not a good idea at this point. Yeah, so it looks as though some people are taking advantage of the situation also by putting up fake domains. So could be stings by law enforcement, taking advantage of the fact that the main one is down. But overall, a very interesting case of how a seizure of a marketplace could actually fail to identify the people who are behind it. So we've got tax season coming up, and we have, of course, more phishing scams, but this is interesting. In this case, it was actually efile.com that was hosting JavaScript malware. So what exactly was going on here? Well, they were hosting a file that was trying to capture information, and this popper.js was lurking in the code that was on the website and attempting to do a number of different things. One of them was just stealing information, but there was also an attempt to try to like drop further files or further like malware and kind of act as like a delivery network for somebody who might be delivering spyware or adware or something else they want on these computers. So the website was hijacked about 2 weeks ago, right at the beginning of tax season, and there was an SSL like mismatch then, which is around the time that this happened. So yeah, just interesting to see that once hackers gained access to the website, the first thing they did was do a JavaScript attack. So they were just hoping that people would be able to, like accept JavaScript, have a bunch of their credentials stolen and not notice. And it seems like the attack might have actually succeeded. So be careful. While filing taxes, I always get nervous when like they're like, oh yeah, you can do your taxes with us or this random third-party business that we've authorized. So if the IRS says that a third party is authorized to do your taxes through, it doesn't mean that you should give them blind trust. It doesn't mean that you should just assume that they are fine. In this case, having like a JavaScript blocker may have broken their software, honestly. Like if you have something like no script on that's aggressive and blocks this sort of attack, you might feel very smart, but you also might not be able to file your taxes. So one of those security versus convenience things where like some people might have been tricked into falling for this just because like maybe they require JavaScript to like do the sign up process or something like that, which is super common. All right. So next up we have Dish Network. So this is relatively short, but I just think this is remarkable because it's one of the first times I've seen a company getting a class action lawsuit because they claim to have better cybersecurity than they actually did. So what's interesting here is trying to dig into whether or not they were like had a fake system that just wasn't followed, or if they just made kind of puffy claims about like having industry level this and whatever. I haven't really seen the details like to indicate whether it was one or the other, but the class action participants certainly feel as though they were lied to or that Dish actually didn't follow any of its own procedures. So aside from the danger of having a ransomware attack or an outage or something, you can add on to that the problem of not being clear about communicating your safety controls and making people feel safe when they're actually not. So yeah, the ransomware incidents seems as though it was a result of just negligence. And when there was an investigation, a lot of people in the class action suit are saying that this is an example of something that was preventable and that they were told that all the precautions that would have prevented it were taken care of. And so they felt comfortable investing their money. So this seems like investors that are involved in the suit, often investors get better results than customers. So we'll see if this actually goes anywhere, but it's an interesting precedent to see if a company that's maybe puffing up their cybersecurity programs a little bit to make their investors feel good can actually experience consequences when they have an incident and the curtains kind of pulled back on whether or not they were really following them. All right, so just a little, we mentioned a lot how phishing attacks often go through Microsoft files that are sent and distributed and end up popping up something that allows you to run a macro. There are so many ways around this, and we constantly see like a game of whack-a-mole where attackers are figuring out new ways of leveraging these files to actually attack somebody who's not paying attention and runs one of these macros. Seems like now Microsoft's strategy is just to automatically block embedded OneNote files from a lot of different extensions that have proven to be dangerous. So 120 of them. So what is the point of that? Like, why would they need to like make blacklist all of these extensions? Well, some of these are either highly specific or allow like weird behaviors or other exploit paths that make it easy for attackers to craft payloads around them. So by looking at the ones that are most risky, like a PS1 file, does anybody know what that is? Is it a PlayStation 1 file? No, it's a PowerShell file. And that could be a problem if it's executed in the right way. So it's relatively smart here to make these extensions more difficult to run, just because this is not enough anymore. When we have this pop up, people ignore it, or if they're in a rush, they'll just hit okay. Like it is nice to have a dialogue that doesn't just have a big like, run this anyway. In this case, it is at least saying you need to like do some extra work in order to open it, and these have been a little bit more successful. But just a pop up that says like okay, or bypass, or I understand, is usually not enough to stop this kind of attack. All right, so let's talk about the Flipper. So the Flipper is again in the news for getting banned, but this time not in Brazil. This time it's getting banned from Amazon. And the reason is a little strange here. So I have tried to use a Flipper on my credit card before, and it is able to grab the credit card number, but that's not what you need to make a credit card transaction. You also need information like the person's address, their name, and other things that is not transferred electronically. So it's not super useful actually for a hacker. So I'm a little bit surprised, honestly, to see Amazon banning the sale of the Flipper Zero on the basis of it being a credit card like copier or a credit card skimming device. Again, like while it is possible to get the credit card number, it's not necessarily useful because in this day and age, you need more information than that in order to actually like get the card. So yeah, very, very strange. Not something that I expected them to ban Flipper for. I really expected it to be something else. Because again, people keep getting in the news. It's a very disruptive tool, and people like to film themselves causing, big problems. Like yesterday, I was watching somebody turn off the menus in a Taco Bell, and everybody getting confused with the Flipper. So I really thought it was going to be something else, but instead they're kind of doubling down on a credit card skimming kind of way of justifying taking this tool down. So again, is this super surprising that like certain marketplaces are deciding that the Flipper is like too edgy for them? No, I don't think so at all. Like when discussing what their whole brand is and like what their whole approach is, it's obvious that Flipper is being edgy and kind of taking that as a risk in order to get lots of word of mouth attention. Obviously, we're talking about the device. That means it's working to a certain degree. The downside to that is it's going to get banned from places as people see it and react to it. And these places that want to be safer decide they don't want to interact with it. Now, that being said, is this a huge loss? Should you feel sad that this has been banned from Amazon? You guys should not have been buying like these things from Amazon in the first place. Most of them were scalped or twice the price or otherwise sketchy. I saw a couple like nascent like flopper zeros that looked like they were emerging on Amazon. So yeah, like no, it's not a big loss. This is not where you buy them from anyway. And the ones that you found on Amazon were pretty sketchy. It is just interesting to note that it seems like someone has kind of misrepresented or misinterpreted this tool because it's not that useful as a credit card scammer. I don't know. Maybe somebody found something new that you can do with it, or maybe I'm ill-informed and there's like a proof of concept going around out there that's really simple to do. But unless you add hardware onto it or like, really like modify this thing, it is not set up as far as I'm aware to be a credit card skimmer. All right. Flopper zeros. Yeah, so what do I mean by flopper zero? I mean like a device that's like kind of copying the look and feel of the Flipper and trying to ride on its coattails, or otherwise trying to get people who are just looking for it and don't totally understand what is unique about it, to just buy a knockoff or something that's similar. So I'm counting down the days until we see a true flopper zero. I've seen a form factor I think could turn into one, but it doesn't come with software or anything. So yes, it will come. Don't worry, everyone. We will see a flopper zero in the near future. All right, so next up, the UK Criminal Records Office is confirming a cyber incident, and it certainly sounds a lot like ransomware. So this is the office that deals with a lot of different records. So this is managing criminal record information, providing criminal records on request, and sharing records with foreign nations. Seems like the gateway portal was breached in some way, shape, or form, and then shut down. It has been down for heavy demands and then technical issues, which kind of sounds again like ransomware. But again, we hear all sorts of things from companies that haven't made, or organizations who haven't made like an official disclosure. But again, it does certainly sound like ransomware. So they are confirming that there's a cyber incident, which is the first phase in admitting, I think, in the cyber grief process that that was the case. But we'll see how this is impacting government services. It seems like they are now doing things via email. So by announcing the fact that they're going to be like reaching out to request payment via email, it seems like if there was just like a data breach, maybe, or like maybe like something problematic, that could be a problem. Having a government agency reaching out to random citizens requesting payments via email. So we'll see how that goes. But obviously, this portal now being down is causing a lot of stress for this organization, and it seems like just one of those examples of how having to switch to a backup could actually put your customers or the people who rely on you at risk if it's going to make them more vulnerable to phishing attacks. All right, so oh, I never even said where Killian is. So Killian is currently enjoying the beginning to a great weekend, and I did not want him to have to stick around just to do the show. So he did send in a couple of articles this week, but Killian is alive and well and is still out there doing his thing, and will be back next week to help go over the news. Forgot to mention that. Sorry, guys. So this is an example of one of the things I'm always afraid of when I'm downloading a new Chrome extension. There have been lots of Chrome extensions out there that secretly do some stuff that you don't want it to do, or will get an update later on that adds new capabilities that could do some stealing. And in this case, it looks like this Relied browser extension is now trying to bypass 2FA and steal cryptocurrency. So obviously, people who have cryptocurrency are a huge target. It's disproportionately easy to make money and run off of attacking these people. So they've started to use 2FA, and that's where these sorts of malicious browser extensions kind of come in. They make it so that if a victim downloads one of these browser extensions from an unknown vector, then the attacker can start to pull down information and do attacks that are pretty sophisticated and rely on tricking the user with overlays and things like that. So imagine they're trying to log in, and then the user is presented with something that looks like a 2FA challenge, but is actually logging the attacker in the background. That's what these sorts of browser extensions had the capability to do. So you have to be really careful. Like, as much as I love my new Chat GPT summarize everything, browser extension, it does have the downside of potentially doing some stuff I don't want. So I have to kind of take a look. There are some tools out there for looking at browser extensions and seeing exactly what the behaviors, the permissions, all that stuff, and kind of getting an understanding of what's happening. And I highly encourage you to try those out if you're suspicious about a browser extension. Although, again, they could just be updated in the future and it would be very hard to tell. All right, so this is something that Killian sent in, and it's interesting to talk about how much information is being generated now by large language models and whether or not that's going to impact the way that the internet works. So having these chatbots responsible for creating so much information is kind of crazy. It means that we may be receiving emails that are mostly generated by ChatGPT that are all like just kind of like padded raw thoughts that somebody shouted into like a large language model at some point. And it's very creepy to know that like you might not talk to a single real person all day via email in the immediate future. So as these tools are becoming so easy to use and so integrated, we're going to see a lot of people just automating stuff. And some of what's automated definitely leaves the possibility open to some very targeted harassment or just tons of useless spam. And I'll say again, I think that one of the most pressing things about like the AI, like upcoming reality, is the ability to have an advertisement that no other human being on earth has had to suffer through. That's just so terrible that you wish somebody else had at least had to like read it with you, but instead you are alone and experiencing that just like absolutely benign and awful piece of advertising. I feel like that is exactly what this is talking about. It's talking about a future where you're spammed with content that is like targeted at you, but is so low quality and sucks so much that it's all that you see. It's kind of hard to tell the difference between a machine and a person's output anymore. It's in fact like getting to the point where it's indistinguishable. So living on an internet where people are not really sure if they're talking to a human or not at any given point, or if information has even been seen by another human being, is pretty dystopian and something that you should probably consider. And last up, we have an interesting story about SIM swapping. And I have the opinion that this author had some information breach or something like that, because the story is really interesting. This person who did the SIM swapping actually went through and not only took their information, they used their phone to approve a bunch of transfers and then used their a copy of their card physically to go in and make a purchase. So do they actually have a picture? Ah, yes, investigative journalism. So they went to the Gucci store. And from the Gucci store, they actually were able to get a, oh no, look at that. They weren't able to get a camera image of the person. Nope. Nope. Just illustrations of the author being frustrated. And then so this is an artist's sketch of what the perpetrator may have looked like. But again, what's interesting here is that the SIM swapping attack wasn't purely virtual. They actually made a copy of the card and then attempted to make a very large purchase at a luxury store in person. That is a new mix of kind of cyber strategies, because typically you'll use this kind of thing to just like, I don't know, buy cryptocurrency or move stuff around. But actually going physically into a store is incredibly risky. And the fact that they used they were wearing a mask and whatever, means that they still weren't caught. So very, very interesting case. Typically, we don't see people making it this personal, like going in and like actually attempting to make a purchase. But it seems as though this was a real nightmare for the reporter, and that the thief did indeed use a physical credit card to make the purchases. But how is that possible when I still have my card? That's a really good question. A lot of times people will wear out the part of the credit card that's more secure, so they'll damage the chip or something so that they have to go through and swipe the magnetic reader. That happens enough that it's not that big of a deal. And if that's all the information that they have, then, like provided the other information is corroborated with a data breach, you would probably be able to pull off this crime. Frankly, we talk about data breaches so much on this show that a lot of these crimes are just cyber criminals with information to some of these vast like collections of breaches that give all the information you would need about a specific person to like buy gas with their credit card, or do other things that don't require anything other than knowledge of where that person lives, their zip code, or even just biographic information. So yeah, like I'm not very surprised about this anymore, because even though this is super traumatizing and it sucks and it's not very common, it is possible because of the sheer amount of data that's just out there that allows people to abuse these systems, like the voice changer that I was just showing off. Like that could allow you to change your voice and make it so that you could call in and have information swapped in a SIM swapping attack. That's pretty remarkable that actually is a thing that's out there now. All right, so that is all the news that I have for today. As I said, Killian's out today, so it's just us. If you have any questions, then make sure to leave them on the channel. So I'm streaming right now to this, hopefully the LinkedIn. You guys will have to tell me if I actually am. Twitch, the Redia channel, and of course the Security Forward channel, plus the Security Forward Twitch. So that's a lot of channels. But if you want me to see your question and answer it on Wednesday, then make sure to leave it on the Security Forward, that Security FWD channel. We're growing. The channel has gotten a bunch more subscribers. We're coming up on a pretty good subscriber milestone, so make sure to subscribe and leave your comments there. And on Wednesday, around the same time, I will come back live and answer all of them. Also, if you want to check out some great stuff from our sponsor, you can go to varonis.com/Kody, Kody, and check out what we're promoting this week. I believe we are talking about both data governance and incident response, something we've covered a lot. So if you're curious about what it actually looks like on the receiving end of some of these attacks, there are some really interesting stories out there, as well as some articles that I've written personally that are available for free on the varonis.com website. And a big shout out to them for letting us do this stream every week. Hope all you guys have a great weekend. And again, if you think that I've missed anything, if you have any suggestions for the show, make sure to leave a comment or shout out to me on Twitter, and I will see it. And we will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.